security, and dignity. Women's role in peace and security is critical to be aligned with the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, underpinned by the Blue Pacific Ocean of Peace Declaration. Let me now speak on the subject in my national capacity. My government is committed to deliver access to quality education for all Solomon Islanders. The Solomon Islands National University is offering second chance programs for women who left formal education due to pregnancy. I am pleased to announce that 9 out of 10 births in Solomon Islands are attended to by skilled professionals. We have distributed reusable menstrual pads to schoolgirls in the provinces as part of our health program, rolled out vaccinations for girls to prevent cervical cancer, and removed duty and goods tax on menstrual sanitary products. To combat violence, we have the Family Protection Act 2014, Penal Code Amendments 2016, Child and Family Welfare Act 2017, and the National Policy to Eliminate Violence Against Women and Girls 2021 to 2027. Empowering women in business remains a national priority. Financial literacy training in rural areas has seen the growth of women saving clubs. These saving clubs have provided women with seed money to pursue their economic goals. In closing, the Pacific region remains steadfast in our commitment to multilateralism, the Beijing Plan of Action, and will continue to place gender equality central to every decision we take in shaping our future. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Michael Martin, Taishu of Ireland.
Chair, 30 years on from the landmark agreement of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, we can acknowledge that the Platform for Action has enabled a great deal of progress in many countries across the globe. And this includes women's access to employment, equal pay and conditions, increased political representation for women, improved access to education and legal reforms in a large number of countries, to promote the realization of women's rights and equality. Although this progress has been steady, it has not been linear or equal, and large implementation gaps remain. While there has been immense positive change, I'm also acutely aware of the contexts in which women and girls' rights have regressed. I would like to highlight here the situation of Afghan women and girls who are enduring an unparalleled system of oppression and discrimination. Ireland considers the attainment of gender equality, equal rights for women and girls, sexual and reproductive health rights as fundamental to a more equal, peaceful and sustainable world. As a result, these are policy priorities across our development and human rights work. When Ireland co-facilitated the negotiations on the 2030 agenda, we played a critical role in ensuring consensus for a standalone goal on gender equality, SDG 5, and for the integration of gender equality across all the SDGs. Gender equality is both a fundamental human right under international law, as well as a necessary condition for sustainable global development. I regret that this human rights-based approach to equality and to women's rights, instead of being reinforced and ring-fenced by the world's leaders, is instead facing a strong and concerted attack. 30 years after the moment of hope and impetus for change, which the Beijing and Cairo processes represented, we celebrate the gains that have been achieved. But we must also acknowledge that in many places progress has stalled, that women continue to be poor in disproportion to men, that they continue to bear the burden of family and childcare, and that they're the most affected by climate change. Ireland strongly affirms our commitment to the United Nations and multilateral structures, and that includes the achievement of genuine gender equality around the world. And that's why we're pleased to be co-facilitating with St. Kitts and Nevis the process to revitalise the Commission on the Status of Women. Ireland has been on our own journey with regard to women's rights in the past 30 years. We have learned the lessons from the dark chapters in our own past, where vulnerable women's voices were ignored and silenced. Rest assured that Ireland is committed to continuing highlighting and prioritising women's human rights, including as we work towards gaining a seat on the Human Rights Council.
I thank the Taisho of Ireland, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Sitiveni Ligamamada Rabuka, Prime Minister of the Republic of Fiji.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, the Fourth World Conference marks a significant turning point in the global agenda for gender equality. This is a celebration of the invaluable contributions that women make in our lives. With a high toll of social crimes, violence and discrimination, the values of respect, gender equality, and women's empowerment must be embodied in societies, in our homes, and in our workplaces. This is the avenue to which their grievances, most of which go unnoticed, are amplified, and it must begin with us as leaders, the political will and accountability to ensure that women are treated with respect and honor. Women comprise more than half the world's population. Therefore, the promise of empowerment and equality should not be a debate. Their role is unparalleled in these unprecedented times. They hold the fort in times of peace and conflict, in times of drought and downpour. Our objectives for the advancement of women focus on key areas of poverty, education, health, capacity building, violence against women, women in armed conflict, women and the economy, women in power and decision-making, human rights of women, women in the media, women and environment, and the right and the girl child. Fiji is making progress on its commitment to inclusive environment ensuring gender equality through family law reforms, adopting such laws as the Fiji Domestic Violence Act of 2009, the Child Welfare Act of 2010, and the Employment Relations Act, as well as other national regulations addressing violence against women, child protection, and employment rights. Fiji's current legal and institutional framework provide adequate protection for women and girls, enabling the government, institutions, and authorities to address discrimination and hold perpetrators accountable. Fiji aims to ensure that gender equality is institutionalized within government structures.
I thank the Prime Minister. I thank the Prime Minister of the Republic of Fiji, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Johannes Gahr Støre, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 30 years ago, thousands met in Beijing with a shared vision, a world where women and girls could live free from inequality, discrimination, and violence. I remember that it felt like history was being made there and then. At that time, I worked as an advisor to Norwegian Prime Minister, first women Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland, who we heard this morning. And she said at that meeting, women's power is a formidable force. She too remains a formidable force. Nobody has taught me more about politics and leadership than her. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action was a bold one, ambitious and transformative. Since then, we have seen undeniable progress. More girls complete secondary education. Fewer girls are married before the age of 18. Extreme poverty among women and girls is reduced. And these are significant and real steps. They are worth celebrating. In my lifetime, women's participation in the workforce has significantly increased in my country, Norway. And this has in fact meant more for Norway economically than the revenue from our energy resources, oil and gas. It has boosted economic growth, it has given women greater financial independence, and brought our society closer to realizing its full potential. This progress has not come by itself. It reflects choices that have been made and struggles that have been fought, rights that have been fought for. We have developed strong laws, made smart investment, and built partnerships with employers, trade unions, and civil society. Thanks to such measures as paid parental leave, flexible work hours, and affordable childcare, both women and men can now practice their work and give priority to it. And let me give you another illustrating example. In Norway, women now account for roughly 1/3 of those completing military service, up from just about 10% a decade ago. So progress is possible. But friends, despite this progress, we face serious challenges. We are witnessing a growing, coordinated backlash against women's rights and girls' rights, against human rights, and especially against sexual and reproductive health and rights and the rights of LGBTQ+ persons. These attacks threaten the hard-won progress we have made. It's everyone's loss because investing in gender equality makes society better. Norway will continue to partner with the UN and civil society around the globe to ensure that women and girls have the right to decide over their own bodies. And we will continue to call on governments to close the gender pay gap, strengthen economic independence, and defend rights under that threat. So let's honor.
I thank the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway and now give the floor to His Excellency Feleti Penitala Teo, Prime Minister of Tuvalu.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years after the Beijing Platform for Action, Tuvalu reaffirms its commitment to gender equality, and we have taken important steps towards that objective. Our Constitution now prohibits discrimination based on sex, embedding gender equality in our highest law. Inclusivity is also part of Tuvalu's top 21 development priorities, which guide our development agenda. In 2024, we adopted a more updated and modern national gender equity policy to assure women's empowerment and protection from violence are integrated across all sectors. In education, Tuvalu girls now perform better than their boys' counterpart and stay in school longer. Women are increasingly present in the public service and civil society, taking leadership roles that shape policies and communities. And our Parliament is considering how to improve laws so that gender equality is not just words, but a lived reality for Tuvaluan women and girls. But challenges remain stark. In Tuvalu, 1 in 2 women continue to experience intimate partner violence. Employment opportunities for women are limited, and too often economic insecurity perpetuate inequality. At present, there are no women in our parliament, and only 8 women sit in local council out of 48 seats. These gaps show how far we still must go, and all of these unfold under the shadow of climate change. For Tuvaluan women, climate change is not a distant threat. It is stripping away rights, a fundamental right to health, food, water, housing, safety, and cultural identity. Yet women in Tuvalu continue to lead. They cultivate gardens to feed families, weave cultural knowledge into new solutions, and raise their voices for climate justice on the world stage. Their resilience is extraordinary, but resilience must never be mistaken for consent to injustice. Excellencies, as we mark Beijing 30, Tuvalu calls on the international community to recognize that gender equality and climate justice are in.
I thank the Prime Minister of Tuvalu and now give the floor to His Excellency Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda.
Distinguished colleagues, it is an honor to join you as we mark 30 years since Beijing, a moment that ignited a global movement of women's rights. 30 years after Beijing, Antigua and Barbuda has moved steadily from promise to action. We have made significant progress. More women, especially young women, in leadership, more female university graduates than males, elimination of inequities in remuneration, and stronger protections in law. Our government continues to institute programs and measures against gender-based violence and sexual offenses against our women and girls, which collectively remain a global challenge. Gender equity is not only a matter of rights, it is essential for justice, development, and sustainability of families and communities. No nation can reach its full potential when half of its people are held back. Our responsibility is clear: to recommit to Beijing's promises by ensuring equal pay for equal work, protecting women from violence, investing in health and education, and opening doors to leadership. For small states like mine, empowering women is critical to survival and sustainability, because women are at the heart of family, community, economy, and resilience in the face of climate change. Excellencies, the Beijing Declaration is not a relic of the past. It's a living promise. Antigua and Barbuda recommits to accelerating implementation of all Beijing commitments to resource gender equality in work, even amid fiscal constraints, amplifying women's leadership in climate action, finance, and peace building, and building a society where every woman and girl can thrive as equal partner in development. Colleagues, gender equality is not only a moral imperative, it is a prerequisite for sustainable development, justice, and peace. Antigua and Barbuda will stand firm, work harder, and speak louder, because the rights, dignity, and potential of women and girls everywhere must never again be negotiable. Let us therefore act with urgency so that equity becomes equality, and every woman and girl can live free, lead boldly, and achieve full potential. I thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and now give the floor to His Excellency Luc Frieden, Prime Minister of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, as we gather for the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, we stand at a crossroads, an opportunity to renew our commitments and responsibility to act more boldly than ever on gender equality. Luxembourg aligns wholeheartedly with UN Women's unifying message of urgency, hope, and possibility to advance the Beijing +30 action agenda. My government remains highly committed to foster gender equality and diversity on all levels of society. This year, Luxembourg is renewing several strategic partnerships with UN agencies, providing flexible multi-annual funding to support transformative action. Among these is its strengthened collaboration with UN Women, to whom Luxembourg is doubling its contribution, recognizing that a well-resourced and empowered UN Women is one of the most effective ways to support gender equality and advance the empowerment of women. We recently renewed our Women, Peace and Security Plan to ensure women shape peace, not just survive conflict. Nationally, we prioritize women's economic empowerment, leadership, and protection from domestic violence. I am proud that Luxembourg is celebrated as having one of the lowest gender pay gaps among EU countries. My government has recently adopted 3 national action plans, among which one on equality between women and men, another one on gender-based violence. These plans count over 300 concrete measures that are being implemented together with the civil society. I invite all member states to commit to fully implement the Beijing +30 action agenda with well-resourced national action plans that address violence against women, political participation, access to justice, and elimination of discriminatory laws and practices. For me, gender equality goes beyond policy. It is a personal belief that every daughter should have the same freedom as every son. That is the Luxembourg I'm committed to building and the world we can achieve together. Thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister of Luxembourg and now give the floor to Her Majesty Queen Mathilde of the Belgians.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago, commitment to undertake robust measures for the advancement of the rights of women and girls. Progress has been achieved in this regard. However, it behooves us to acknowledge the fact that no country has fully achieved gender equality. On the contrary, what we have observed are alarming setbacks on matters related to equality and a proliferating crisis which are affecting the rights of women and girls. There is a clear risk that in these difficult, troubled times, the question of equality for all will be cast aside and possibly even deliberately removed from the agenda. For this reason, Belgium cannot allow for progress which has been achieved over the past 3 decades, for this progress to evaporate. We remain fully committed to the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, as well as to Agenda 2030. I wish to take this opportunity to highlight 2 key aspects of particular importance to Belgium. First and foremost, equal participation of women in decision-making. It has been recognized for a long time that women's participation is a prerequisite for the achievement of sustainable and effective and efficient solutions. Security Council Resolution 1325 recognizes thus the importance of the involvement of women in all peace processes and reconciliation efforts. The goal is clear. The meaningful and equal participation is critical. This requires tangible actions to be undertaken to eliminate structural obstacles, discriminatory laws, and the norms which perpetuate stereotypes. Another key objective is as follows. There's a need to combat violence against women and girls. We cannot ignore the fact that there are acts of intimidation which women and girls continue to face. Unfortunately, we see that sexual violence is far too frequently leveraged as a weapon of war in conflict zones. There, too, the goal is clear: zero violence, zero tolerance. To achieve this goal, there is a need for integrated prevention, protection, and support policies for victims and for there to be a fight against impunity. No custom, tradition, or religious tradition can be invoked to justify these acts of violence targeting women and girls, be it forced violence, coercive controls, domestic violence, feminicide, female genital mutilation. The microphone has been cut off.
I thank Her Majesty I thank Her Majesty Queen Matilda of the Belgians and I now give the floor to Her Excellency Sabine Monaouni, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Home Affairs, Economy and Environment of the Principality of Liechtenstein.
We are meeting at a pivotal time for the empowerment of women and girls. In recent years, we have witnessed a backlash to gender equality. It has manifested in various forms, such as legislative rollbacks, as well as the proliferation of misogynist and anti-gender rhetoric, including in parliaments and public office. Unfortunately, these setbacks are not isolated incidents, but part of a global trend that threatens to reverse the slow but steady progress we have made towards gender equality. The unprecedented number of armed conflicts globally, moreover, constitute human rights crises that disproportionately affect women and girls. And despite strong evidence of the contribution that women make at various stages and levels to resolve conflict, exclusion rather than inclusion has remained the norm in formal peace processes. This undermines the sustainability of peace. It also deprives societies of perspectives and solutions that are vital for recovery and reconciliation. The anniversary of Beijing, as well as the upcoming 25th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda are stark reminders that we still have a very long way ahead of us to achieve gender equality and ensure the full, equal and meaningful participation of women in all aspects of peace and security. Madam President, ending gender-based violence is one of the 6 key actions of the Beijing Platform for Action, and rightfully so. The large majority of member states has legislation in place. As a committed state party to the Council of Europe Convention on Violence Against Women, also known as the Istanbul Convention, Liechtenstein has set up a coordination group that allows for regular exchanges with civil society and professionals from relevant authorities and NGOs on how to further improve our legislative and policy framework to end gender-based violence. I invite all of you who have not yet done so to ratify this key instrument, which is complementary to relevant UN treaties and resolutions. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister of Liechtenstein and now give the floor to His Excellency Mohammad Ishaq Dar, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu salli ala Rasulil Kareem. President, Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, a very good afternoon. 30 years ago in Beijing, we pledged to build a future where women and girls enjoy full equality and empowerment. Today, as we commemorate this milestone, we must recommit not just in words, but through bold and measurable action. For Pakistan, gender equality is anchored in the vision of our founding father, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who declared, "No nation can rise to the height of glory unless your women are side by side with you." Guided by this conviction, Pakistan has made significant progress. Women continue to hold leadership positions in politics, judiciary, bureaucracy, law enforcement, and armed forces. Pakistan was proud to elect first female Prime Minister, late Benazir Bhutto in the Muslim world, and more recently, first woman Chief Minister of Punjab, Ms. Maryam Nawaz Sharif. With reserved seats in the national and provincial assemblies, as well as in local bodies, women's voices are shaping policy at every level. Dedicated institutions in Pakistan are ensuring rights, protection, and access to justice for women. We have also enacted progressive legislation to protect women from violence, workplace harassment, and discrimination. We are also acting at the grassroots level. Social protection and empowerment programs, such as the federal-funded Benazir Income Support Program and the Prime Minister's Youth Program, are helping women escape poverty, gain access to finance, and benefit from vocational and entrepreneurial opportunities. Yet we know that progress is uneven both globally and nationally. What is needed now is for us to collectively scale up financing for gender equality through national budgets, international cooperation, and innovative partnerships, because commitments without resources remain unfulfilled promises. Mr. President, Beijing Declaration remains the boldest global compact for women's rights. Its true legacy must progress. Let us act with urgency, courage, and solidarity so that every woman and girl can live free from poverty and violence and be empowered to lead and contribute to inclusive development. I thank you all.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, and now give the floor to His Excellency Ervin Ibrahimovic, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Montenegro.
Excellencies, the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls are among the central pillars of the government of Montenegro's human rights policy. Over the last 3 decades, Montenegro has succeeded to set up the legislative and strategic framework for agenda equality and to significantly improve its institutional network at all levels. Despite the progress, serious challenges remain, in particular when it comes to the effectiveness in institutional capacities and their efficiency in fighting discrimination, harassment, and hate speech and gender-based violence. The 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action is a unique opportunity for all of us to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to gender equality and women empowerment. It reminds us that the advancement and full enjoyment of all human rights by all women and girls everywhere is not only a goal in itself. Advocating for women's rights, combating discriminatory policies and practices, fighting the ever-increasing violence against women and girls, as well as challenging the deeply rooted stereotypes in our societies that affect inequalities are not just our obligation under the international human rights law. It is the essence of a good governance and the foundation for sustainable and inclusive development. The last 3 decades have shown that the global progress is possible in addressing domestic violence in the education field, in increasing women's participation in the parliament. But much remains to be done. Montenegro will continue to work with all partners to advance implementation of the key UN, Council of Europe, and EU norms and standards. We will scale up our effort toward the full and effective implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, including the Beijing Plus 30 process and the conclusion of the Commission of the Status of Women. And the very end, Excellencies, an ordinary girl in Montenegro can expect to live longer than an ordinary boy. She will probably get higher level of education than her boy's classmate. But despite all the progress, she will still have challenges if she dreams to become a head of state or government, or to address you from this place. This is not reality only for Montenegro girls. It is up to us, the governments in power, to invest more to create a just and equal future for all women and girls. We owe it to them, but above all, we owe it to all of us, to our entire societies as we search for meaningful answers.
I thank the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Montenegro and now give the floor to Her Excellency Joelle Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment of St. Kitts and Nevis on behalf of the Caribbean community.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, St. Kitts and Nevis has the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Caribbean community, CARICOM. Excellencies, today marks 30 years since the world gathered in Beijing to make a bold promise to women and girls that their rights would no longer be violable, their voices and experiences no longer silenced, their inclusion no longer negotiable, and their lives and expertise no longer devalued or overlooked. The declaration signaled the international community's political will to serve and honor an undeniable requirement of sustainable development, gender parity. However, 30 years later, if we appraise the delivered outcomes of our actions, we would find clear signs of regression, promises reneged, actions unfulfilled, and the spirit of the declaration underserved. Despite their indispensable roles, women and girls continue to face unequal burdens, limited opportunities, and persistent threats to their safety and autonomy. They are often relegated to the informal sector, underrepresented in political leadership, and disproportionately affected by poverty, climate change, and gender-based violence, realities that are escalated by the climate crisis. Notwithstanding, women and girls, especially in the Caribbean and across small island developing states, remain the fulcrum of our societies. Their stewardship and contributions are the axis which families, communities, and indeed nations turn. Acknowledging this, CARICOM reaffirms its commitment to the full implementation and acceleration of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and all other frameworks geared towards the realization of gender equality. We must look at the numbers and decode the pictures that the data paints. It is estimated that by 2030, around 8.1% of women and girls will live in extreme poverty. Only 28% of women across the world serve as ministers of environment. Women only hold 26.9% of parliamentary seats worldwide. Globally, the wage gap persists, with women still earning 20% less than men for work of equal value. Women enjoy only 64% of rights that men do. Sobering realities. In the Caribbean community, we strive for political culture that prioritizes women in decision-making and leadership, evidenced by our 3 democratically elected female heads of government who we commend and celebrate, but we acknowledge that we still have far to go. Noting this, last Friday, St. Kitts and Nevis, through our co-leadership with Ireland, facilitated the passage of the resolution on the revitalization on the Commission of the Status of Women, a renewed commitment to women and girls. Translating intention into action can only be sustained with legislative and policy-backed reformations. As such, our region remains steadfast in the cultivation of gender-responsive policies and legislation and the review of outdated laws that perpetuate discrimination. Excellencies, we must recognize that equality has to be budgeted for and planned for, especially for SIDS with limited fiscal space. CARICOM calls for increased accessible international financing that incorporates the needs of women, for gender-responsive climate action that acknowledges the pivotal role of women and girls in leading the charge against climate change. And we emphasize the need for a paradigm shift in our educational sectors and digital systems in alignment with the needs of women and girls. In closing, CARICOM recommits its policy towards gender empowerment, resourcing through gender-sensitive climate financing, and accelerating the full force of political will. Another 30 years should not greet us speaking of potential and possibilities. Let us make good on our shared ambition to leave no one behind.
I thank the Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and now give the floor to Her Excellency Nemat Neme Aoun, First Lady of Lebanon and President of the National Commission for Lebanese Women.
السيدة الرئيسة أصحاب
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am honoured to be here with you representing Lebanon as we commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Programme of Action. This is the cornerstone of our action to support gender equality and the empowerment of women. The 69th session of the CSW, I highlighted the action of Lebanese women strengthening the resilience of Lebanese society through the various crises that have afflicted the country and that unfortunately continue to this day. Lebanon is at a crossroads. Recovery and stability in my country requires political and economic reform. And this, in turn, requires the empowerment of women and trusting women. Women's role is not just symbolic, it is crucial for restoring peace and prosperity. Lebanon cannot continue to be held hostage by war calculations by the powers surrounding it. The repercussions only exacerbate the ill fortune of the Lebanese, and especially women. In order to overcome all of these obstacles facing women in Lebanon, we must look to our partners. Peace in Lebanon and the end of war in Lebanon means peace in the Middle East. And when we talk about the stability and integrity of Lebanon, we are talking also about the same thing for our neighboring countries. And this is how Lebanese women can achieve stability together and alongside all of the women of the Middle East. And this is why we reinforce their role in our society. There cannot be true sovereignty without women taking control of their own destiny. And there cannot be a true sovereign state without the participation of women in decision-making. Similarly, with economics, women have a right to education, to work, and to equality. Lebanon is committed to the Beijing Declaration. This is how we developed and adopted our second national plan. in accordance with the Security Council Resolution 1325. We stand ready to work with all of our partners for the benefit of all women and girls in Lebanon so that they can live in dignity, equality and peace. Among the countries present here, there are Lebanese women here in the audience. Thank you.
I thank the First Lady of Lebanon, and I now give the floor to Her Excellency Junko Mihara. Related to children, measures for declining birth rate, youth empowerment, and gender equality.
Honorable Chair, Excellencies, in line with the Beijing Plus-30 action agenda, the government of Japan promises to steadfastly promote initiatives in the area of peace and security and full and equal decision-making power. In January of last year, in the wake of the Noto Peninsula earthquake, the doctor opened a women-only rest space in the disaster-stricken area and distributed whistles at shelters to help prevent sexual violences. The doctor is Ms. Masako Negami, an internal medicine physician. As a result of experiencing disasters such as the Great East Japan earthquake, we have learned a great deal regarding the necessary measures from the perspective of women when the disaster strikes. Dr. Megami, as well as many women's support organizations and corporations, work closely with the government to provide support to women in the metro area. Japan remains strongly committed to implementing and strengthening the women, the peace and the security agenda, including that the location of the disaster, the risk reduction measures, and its disaster response across various fields. Japan is also continuing its efforts to expanding the participation of the women at the disaster-making level of fields. Our chief priority is to foster regions that are attractive to women, whether urban or rural. Accordingly, we revised the Basic Act of Gender Equal Society this year, which has enacted following the Beijing conference. Next spring, we will establish the Japan Gender Equality Promotion Agency as a national center to robustly support the initiatives of the centers of the gender equality located in each region, aims to building the system through all the local stakeholders can engage in and make efforts of changing gender stereotypes, biases, and social norms. In addition, this year, we will formulate the basic plan to gender equality and rigorously advance the Beijing Plus-30 action agenda. A Japanese female entrepreneur once told, "I didn't want to give up either raising my children or my career, so I started the business with a view to creating my own workplace." She left her job after giving birth and returned to her hometown despite challenging experiences in the male-dominated community. She managed to start her own business, providing a work experience program at the sake brewery. She also recruited local women of the wide range of ages and expanding the business. Chair, I firmly believe that there are still a great many ways that Japan can change. Japan will continue to coordinate with all countries and make every possible effort to realize a gender equal society. Thank you very much.
The Minister of State of Japan, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Baiba Braze, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
Honorable Excellencies, distinguished delegates and participants, esteemed advocates and champions of gender equality, it is my honor to address the General Assembly, especially on an occasion as significant as the 30th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women. 30 years ago, a historic commitment to gender equality was made, embodied by the Beijing Declaration. 3 decades of effort have brought significant achievements and equally significant backsliding. In Latvia, we are currently focused on advancing gender equality by ensuring equal rights and opportunities in the labor market and education, but also addressing harmful gender stereotypes and integrating gender perspectives into policy planning. Our 3-year gender equality plan strengthens these commitments, focusing on concrete changes in employment and education, promoting gender mainstreaming across governance, and intensifying efforts to prevent and combat gender-based violence. Latvia is committed to closing the gender pay gap and ensuring equal employment access. We support women entrepreneurs. We promote family-friendly workplace policies and enhance work-life balance. Our focus on increasing women's representation in STEM and leadership role highlights our dedication to breaking barriers. Latvia stands among the global leaders in gender balance in science, with women making up over 50% of our scientists. Also, I would like to highlight the importance of national action plans on women, peace and security, as we are currently developing our second plan. These plans are not just symbolic commitments, but practical tools for turning the WPS agenda into measurable progress on the ground. We encourage all member states to adopt and strengthen their own plans, nationally or regionally, to ensure that meaningful participation of women is at the heart of peace building, conflict prevention, and security policy. As an elected member of the UN Security Council for the term 2026-27, Latvia reaffirms our unwavering commitment to advancing the WPS agenda nationally and internationally. Excellencies, Latvia remains a steadfast supporter of the UN's efforts to advance gender equality by committing to multilateral cooperation, continued financial contributions, and mainstreaming gender equality through all policies. Yet, true equality must be reflected within the UN itself. For 79 years, no woman has held the UN top position. We encourage member states.
I thank the Minister of Latvia and now give the floor to Her Excellency Marcia Helena Carvalho Lopes, Minister of Women, Brazil.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago in Beijing, the world stated unequivocally that women's rights are human rights. Today, as we celebrate the Beijing Platform for Action, we reaffirm this commitment, conscious that without gender equality, there can be no true democracy, nor can there be sustainable development. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has reiterated in international forums, Brazil seeks to be an active voice in defense of peace, democracy, and social and climate justice, placing social participation guided by an inclusive perspective at the center of the political debate, a perspective including Afro-descendant populations, native peoples, communities of the waters, fields and forests, migrants, LGBTQA+, individuals, youth, children, adolescents, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. It is in this spirit that I bring Brazil's contribution to this high-level meeting. Brazil has been giving concrete expression to the Beijing Platform for Action. I highlight the equal pay law enacted by President Lula, which ensures transparency and equal remuneration between men and women. I also various policies to confront gender-based violence, to promote women's economic empowerment, and to build the national care policy, pillars of our contemporary response to Beijing's 12 areas of concern. Brazil also announces as one of its actions under the framework of Beijing +30 its commitment to a protocol for responding to women in climate emergencies and disasters, developed in partnership with UN Women Brazil and within the context of Brazil's presidency of COP30. This protocol integrates the gender perspective in every stage of emergency and disaster management, from prevention to reconstruction, to ensure equitable, inclusive, and effective responses. It is anchored in national experiences and in the successful South-South cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the 30th anniversary of Beijing is more than a celebration. It is a call to action. Brazil reaffirms its commitment to advancing through multilateral cooperation toward a society without hunger, racism that is just, sovereign, and democratic.
I thank the Minister of Brazil, obrigada, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Oguljenet Berdilieva, Chairwoman of the Central Council of Women's Union and Chairwoman of the National Center of Trade Unions of Turkmenistan.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I wish to extend my genuine gratitude to the organizers for having convened this high-level meeting to dedicate an important milestone, the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on the Status of Women. This is a conference which was held in 1995 in Beijing. It became a milestone in advancement of equality between men and women and reinforcement of the rights of women as an integral component of human rights. 30 years have elapsed, and we can note with pride that significant success has been achieved. But at the same time, we also see that the agenda which has been enshrined in the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action remains relevant today. Turkmenistan is guided by the policy of our deeply respected president. We attribute significance to the establishment of conditions for women and girls to fully harness their potential and to ensure that they can fully participate in social, political, and economic life of the country. The Union of Women of Turkmenistan is a key civic organization bringing together women of various generations and professions, and it contributes to national and international obligations in the area of gender equality being made a reality. We have legal institutional mechanisms to protect the rights of women, to support mothers and children, to develop women's entrepreneurship initiatives and expand opportunities for education and vocational training. Particular attention is paid to women, to young people and girls, for they determine the future. Turkmenistan firmly believes that investments in education, healthcare, and leadership qualities of girls and women represents an investment in sustainable development of society and prosperity for all of humankind. Today, we have an opportunity to exchange best practices and to pool efforts to achieve the sustainable development agenda for the period up until 2030. Turkmenistan stands ready to continue to proactively cooperate with the United Nations and its specialized structures, as well as with member states, in the advancement of the principle of gender equality and the empowerment of women. Distinguished colleagues, the Beijing conference left us a valuable legacy. Only through joint efforts, respect, and mutual understanding can we build a world where every woman and every girl has the opportunity to fully harness their potential. We reaffirm our commitment to this path, and we extend our readiness to do everything possible to contribute to our shared objective. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the chairwomen of the councils of Turkmenistan and now give the floor to His Excellency Arnoldo André Tinoco, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica.
Señora Presidenta.
Madam President, 30 years ago in Beijing, the international community proclaimed something that today, in 2025, must remain unquestionable, that women's rights are human rights. However, the struggle for equality and equity remains unfinished, and it reminds us, as we commemorate 80 years since the creation of this organization, that 8 Decades have passed without a single woman at its helm. It is urgent that we guarantee women's participation. Without female leadership, there can be no social development, no economic progress, and much less climate justice. At the COP28, only 34% of delegations were made up of women, and less than 20% of these delegations were led by women. Costa Rica is committed to strengthening Pillar 6 of Beijing Plus 30 and highlights its national gender and climate change plan. As a pioneer in promoting female leadership and dialogue in environmental governance and the transition to sustainable economies, similarly, it is essential that we eradicate violence against women, a global crisis that will affect 1 in 3 women around the world. The CSW 69 political declaration facilitated by Costa Rica and Cabo Verde underscored the need to ensure safe environments free from domestic violence, online violence, harassment and sexual violence, especially in the context of armed conflict. In this regard, my country reaffirms its commitment to Pillar 3 of Beijing Plus 30, zero violence, and we will strengthen access to comprehensive care and protection services in rural and indigenous areas. Madam President, Costa Rica urges member states to renew their national commitments and to align their actions with the global commitments and to support the CSW call for the next Secretary General of the United Nations to be a woman. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Costa Rica and now give the floor to Her Excellency Butaina bint Ali Al-Jabr Al-Nuaimi, Minister of Social Development and Family of Qatar.
السيدة الرئيسة.
Madam President, the state of Qatar attributes tremendous significance to the question of the empowerment of women and women's participation in all areas of life. This is attested to through national legislation and policy for the advancement and empowerment of women, and my country has undertaken a number of significant measures which are in accordance with the Beijing Declaration and Program of Action, as well as the SDGs. These include a mobilization of adequate funds for the empowerment of women and gender equality. We have a national strategy in this area for 2024 to 2030, and this is geared towards capacity building for women. My country takes great pride in the achievements of Qatari women. In line with according to recent indicators, my country holds the first place among Arab countries in terms of the participation of women in the workforce. The percentage of women is now 63% in the labor market, and this is according to statistics from the World Bank dating 2024. The number of women with diplomas is 64.7%, which exceeds a global average. We encourage development projects in my country. We encourage private sector and civil society and development projects. We also have specialized plans for women. My country has extended multi-annual support for UN women to the tune of $2.2 million for the period 2024 to 2026. Madam President, as we prepare to hold the World Summit on Social Development in 2025, on the second World Summit for Social Development, that being the theme, it is our pleasure to host this event. We are certain that this will present an opportunity to achieve transformative progress for the empowerment of women and their role to build upon social progress that has been achieved and to build a better world. Unfortunately, Madam President, we are bearing witness to violations of the rights of women and girls, particularly in conflict-affected areas. The Palestinian-occupied Palestinian territory is an example of this. Qatar will continue to maintain a commitment to undertake effort to promote security and stability in the region. We shall continue to our efforts for our fraternal Palestinian people. To conclude, we are certain that the Beijing Declaration and Program of Action are closely linked to the status of women and our source of inspiration. Thank you.
The Minister of Qatar, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Agnes Na Momo Lartey, Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection of Ghana.
Madam President, 30 years ago, the world adopted the Beijing Declaration. It was a bold vision that affirmed a truth, a simple truth, that the advancement of women and girls is essential for peace, justice, and sustainable development. Today, as we commemorate this milestone, we accelerate the progress that has been made, but are also reminded that the journey to full equality is not yet complete. For Ghana, this commemoration carries special significance. It coincides with the 50th anniversary of our national machinery of women, which has been central in advancing women's empowerment in our country. In January this year, Ghana's first female vice president was sworn in. This is a breakthrough moment that reflects our determination to ensure women's voices are heard at the highest level of governance. Over the years, Ghana has continued to strengthen its legal and policy framework. We enacted the Affirmative Action Act in 2024 and adopted a new gender policy that will guide our efforts from 2025 to 2035. We have reinforced protection systems through the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit of the Ghana Police Service. Equally, of importance is our focus on economic empowerment. Programs such as the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty, the School Feeding Program, and microfinance, small loan centers support women entrepreneurs, opening doors for women across communities. Plans are also underway to establish a Women's Development Bank that will expand financial inclusion and provide affordable credit to strengthen economic independence of women, particularly those in underserved areas. Madam President, the Beijing Declaration was never meant to be a promise written on paper. It was and remains a call to action. To mark the 30 years is not simply to look back with pride. It is to recommit with urgency. Our task now is to remove the remaining barriers, give women and girls equal voices and opportunity to ensure that progress we've made are irreversible. This commemoration must be more than remembrance. It must be renewal and it must be action, because when women rise, nations rise, and with them, humanity is lifted. In conclusion, Ghana stands firm in its commitment to a future where no woman or girl is left behind. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Ghana and now give the floor to Her Excellency Mahinur Özdemir Göktaş, Minister of Family and Social Services of Turkey.
Chair, distinguished participants, it's a pleasure to be with you at this meaningful gathering which aims to carry forward the legacy on the Fourth World Conference on Women. There is no doubt that the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action has been a global commitment beyond its time. This commitment reminds us that equality, justice, and peace in our societies can be achieved only through the empowerment of women. Although the progress achieved over the past 30 years in advancing women's participation is invaluable, challenges still remain. As our President, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan has stated, the 21st century, contrary to expectations, is increasingly turning into an age of crisis. In all crisis situations, women and girls bear the heaviest burden. Today, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a clear example of this reality. It's not only a regional issue, but a global challenge for humanity. Delaying peace means more death and destruction every day. Active participation of women should be urged to build a peace which will end this crisis once and for all. On this occasion, I'll call upon all countries to take immediate and effective action to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and to safeguard the right to life of all women and children. Dear participants, Turkey considers the empowerment of women as fundamental for social welfare. We build our social policies upon these understandings. We have developed the legal and institutional framework to promote the empowerment of women and girls. Our Women's Empowerment Strategy document and action plan is guiding of effort on this field. Comprehensive social service networks, incentives that facilitate women's participation in economic lives, and budgeting effort responsive to women-man equality are some of these concrete steps we have taken. We also have supported women entrepreneurs, cooperatives. In addition, we have contributed to enhancing women's digital and financial literacy skills through regulation, including the right to part-time work after childbirth and mandatory childcare services at place. A stronger balance between work and family has been ensured for women. We have achieved significant progress in women's participation in the labor force and their access to equal opportunities in all areas. The international community must develop new mechanisms to ensure the effective participation of women in peace progress, climate action, and digital transformation. As Turkey, we are determined to fulfill our responsibility in this regard. Turkey will continue its significant contribution to the work carried out in the international fora, in particular the UN. We stand ready to support every initiative that unlocks the potential of women and contributes to building more just and prosperous societies. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Turkey and now give the floor to Her Excellency Kristrún Frostadóttir, Prime Minister of the Republic of Iceland.
Excellencies, 30 years after the historic Beijing conference and its groundbreaking declaration and platform for action, our commitments to full gender equality have yet to be fulfilled. We have made progress, but a gap remains between and within societies. We must continue to remind ourselves that equal societies are healthy and resilient societies. 30 years after Beijing, we see a backlash unfolding against hard-earned progress on human rights and gender equality. This is real and deeply concerning. Excellencies, I grew up with a female president, and I assumed as a young girl in Reykjavik that presidents were female. I knew nothing else. Role models matter, and what we normalize matters. In 1980, Icelanders democratically elected the world's first female president, a few years after a women's strike brought the country to a standstill. The rapid rise of women's political participation in Iceland made sure that policies such as universal childcare and shared parental leave were turned into reality. The norms changed when women moved into governing positions. The true victory, however, is that in Iceland, gender is not a decisive factor in public life anymore. What matters is that individuals serve with competence and integrity. I lead a coalition government where all three party leaders are women. The leader of the opposition is a woman, so is the president of Iceland and the Speaker of Parliament. Although this is historic, it doesn't feel abnormal to us. But Iceland is not perfect. Gender-based violence is of great concern, and the pay gap will remain while we continue to look at caretaking jobs as low-value jobs instead of what they really are, the backbone of our society. Excellencies, the burden is on all our shoulders to push for equality and change the norms across societies, so all children feel equal growing up and get equal opportunities, regardless of gender. Modern legislative action is key in areas such as childcare, labor market relations, parental leave, and LGBTQI rights. Let this Beijing 30th anniversary be a celebration of the success we have made, but also a reminder that we have a distance still to go. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Iceland and now give the floor to Her Excellency Pasowende Peliadje Kabore, Minister for Humanitarian Action and National Solidarity of Burkina Faso.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President, distinguished delegates, in line with the Beijing Programme for Action, Burkina Faso has embarked on structural reforms with a view to sustainably improving living conditions and especially those of women. This commitment led us to strengthen the legal and institutional framework as well as initiatives aimed at the socio-economic empowerment of women and ensuring their full participation in decision-making. Our actions have resulted in significant progress. For instance, in the area of education, there has been a significant increase in girls' enrollment rates across the board, with a growing number of women in higher education. In terms of health, free maternal health care services, an increase in the rate of assisted deliveries going from 83% to 92% between 2015 and 2023, as well as a subsidy for the treatment of women's cancer, have contributed to a significant drop in maternal mortality. In addition, the distances that need to be covered to access healthcare centres have been reduced. In terms of economic empowerment, our focus was better inclusion of women and girls in the agricultural and financial sectors. Women in these areas have thus benefited from public financing at preferential rates, covering at least 30% of the agricultural areas newly developed by the state. Between 2020 and 2024, more than 500,000 women benefited from loans from the Support Fund for Women's Income-Generating Activities for a total amount estimated at nearly $200 million. In governance, women's representation in Parliament and other decision-making bodies has improved significantly. Madam President, despite the efforts and the undeniable achievements, many challenges remain, especially due to the very difficult security context and the resulting forced displacement of populations. In response to this, Burkina Faso has adopted a national strategy for the recovery of internally displaced persons and host communities, integrating a gender-sensitive approach. In the medium and long term, my country intends to strengthen economic empowerment and women's entrepreneurship, intensify the fight against violence against women and girls, as well as harmful practices such as female genital mutilation, FGM, and forced early marriage. We're improving access to maternal and child health care, and we are also promoting women's access to decision-making and basic infrastructure. Fully convinced as we are of the essential role of the family as a vector for the transmission of values and as a lever for social transformation, our public policies will continue to place particular emphasis on the protection of the family as a guarantor of the development of women and girls. In conclusion, Madam President, my delegation will conclude. The Speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank the Minister of Burkina Faso, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Sean Sobers, Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs of Trinidad and Tobago.
Chair, I thank the President of the General Assembly and UN Women for convening this meeting. Trinidad and Tobago has long advocated for a society where women and girls are empowered and promoted, and has consistently advocated for the removal of systematic barriers that inhibit inequality at home, in the workplace, and in the wider society. Today, we celebrate a momentous milestone, the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This historic framework remains a beacon of hope and a call to action for achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls everywhere. This declaration has provided the catalyst for transformative change. It has driven policies that uplift women, amplify their voices, and champion their rights in education, health, leadership, and beyond. It has shown us that when women thrive, societies prosper. Today, my delegation is proud to be led by the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Visesa, Senior Counsel, as this is exactly the vision she has for women in Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, as we commemorate this occasion and celebrate the progress to date, we also lament there are millions of women and girls that still face barriers limiting their potential. From wage gaps and gender-based violence to unequal access to opportunities, the challenges are real and urgent. Emerging global crises such as climate change, conflict, and technological divides further exacerbate these inequalities, demanding our unwavering focus and action. This commemoration is not just a celebration of the gains made thus far, but an urgent call to action for the work yet to be done. Chair, Trinidad and Tobago is of the view that the best way to honor the legacy of Beijing is to renew our commitment to the vision encompassed in the platform of action. Let us work together to dismantle systematic barriers and create a world where every woman and girl can live with dignity, freedom, and opportunity. Together, we can build such a world where gender equality is not just a goal, but a reality for all. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Ruth Kwan Sing Cross, Minister for Women, Youth, Sport and Social Affairs of Kiribati.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, may I extend warm Pacific greetings from the beautiful islands of Kiribati to the commemoration of 8 decades of achievements since the founding of the United Nations. As we mark 30 years of the Beijing Platform for Action, we echo sentiments shared by His Excellency Jeremiah Manele, Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands and Chair of the Pacific Islands Forum. As one blue Pacific continent, we stand united in strength and diversity, championing gender equality and social inclusion as core values of our shared identity. We know that Pacific women are not just shaping change, we are delivering it. Kiribati has crafted national policies and frameworks aimed at mainstreaming gender-responsive approaches across all sectors. We have taken decisive steps to institutionalize gender-responsive budgeting to ensure financial resources are allocated effectively, bolstering the capacity of our gender machinery to deliver meaningful results through economic empowerment. Through these mechanisms and more, we remain resolute in our shared commitment to eradicate the scourge of gender-based violence. We are encouraged by promising trends in Kiribati of increased representation of women in local governance, the public sector, and the judiciary. I stand here as one of 2 women ministers out of 5 women MPs to acknowledge that 10% is progress. All gains are a testament to the determination of Pacific women and a changing narrative that recognizes women not just as contributors, but as key to the Pacific's evolution and progress. Today, we reaffirm our call for stronger international solidarity to accelerate the full implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. We urge the prioritization and scaling up of financial and technical assistance to support gender-responsive budgeting. We also call for enhanced knowledge sharing and capacity building, particularly to strengthen data collection and analysis tools that are vital for evidence-based policymaking. Given the disproportionate impacts of climate change on frontline countries like Kiribati, Direct access to gender-responsive climate finance is imperative to effectively address the unique challenges that we face. Prioritizing women's economic empowerment in climate action is essential to building self-reliance and resilience in the face of climate impacts that disproportionately affect women and girls. Madam President, we recommit to ensuring the promises made are fulfilled to ensure women and children no longer bear the burden of unmet commitments. Kiribati stands ready to work better together with all partners to ensure the vision of Beijing is a promise that women and girls in all their diversity are empowered to live in peace, security, and
I thank the Minister of Kiribati and now give the floor to His Excellency Tani Mohamed Soilihi, Minister for la Francophonie and International Partnerships of France.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for France to participate in this event. 30 years ago in Beijing, we adopted a major commitment to make equality between men and women a universal reality. We have made progress in a number of areas. However, we have not yet attained the goals. Today, we have gathered at a time when the very principle of equality between men and women has experienced setbacks in many parts of the world. Nothing is ever given in terms of equality between men and women. Women and girls continue to be targeted by sexist and sexual violence, gender-based violence, including during armed conflict. This violence includes the use of rape as a weapon of war, and this has risen in incidents, and we call for armed groups to be held accountable. Respect for international law and international humanitarian law must be the collective compass, so to speak. Through the United Nations, mechanisms have been established for national capacity building to combat impunity. We call for these mechanisms to enjoy support and for them to be reinforced. We have a commitment which is stronger than ever before to women and girls' health. We have a feminist foreign policy, and through this year we launched our very first international strategies for feminist foreign policy for 5 years. Sexual and reproductive health and rights are a key pillar of this strategy. In supporting the bodily autonomy of women, France supports the work of the United Nations, UNFPA and UN Women. Women need to have ownership over their bodies and their choices and have access to political and public life. We are not talking about a minority, but about half of humanity. Women's participation in decision-making processes is a key democratic value and a key for stability and prosperity for all. This is why we encourage throughout the world women's participation at the highest levels, including at the UN. In terms of feminist diplomacy, we have adopted a robust commitment with robust measures and initiatives through the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. We also proactively support civil society with the French Support Fund for Feminist Organizations. And lastly, we support feminist organizations as they establish international projects, so the online laboratory for women's rights, including digital space. 30 years after the Beijing conference, France remains convinced of its importance. The microphone has been cut off.
The Minister of France, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Anita Anand, Minister of Foreign Affairs from Canada.
Bonjour, mes amis.
Good afternoon, friends.
We mark 30 years since the world came together in Beijing for the 4th World Conference on Women, where the world adopted the most ambitious blueprint ever for advancing the rights of women and girls. As we reflect on that moment, let us remember L'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes n'est pas un luxe, mais une
Equality between men and women is not a luxury, but a necessity for our societies.
optional. It is essential. For me, this anniversary is deeply personal. I stand on the shoulders of my mother, an immigrant woman and medical doctor from India, who came to a small rural town in Nova Scotia, Canada in the 1960s. In a place where few looked like her, she had to prove herself again and again. She raised 3 daughters to be strong, to work hard, to support each other, and to keep trying even in the most adverse circumstances. She lived the spirit of Beijing long before 1995. She believed in education, in health, and in the power of women to transform their communities. But my mother did not stand alone. My father believed in her and in us, his 3 daughters. He supported us as we pursued our paths as women and as professionals, never doubting that our ambitions were valid, our talents real, and our futures worth investing in. His example showed us that gender equality is not only a woman's cause, it is a shared responsibility. We have made progress since Beijing, more women in leadership, stronger protections, better health outcomes. Yet women today still have to work twice as hard, to walk twice as far, to speak twice as loud, and to prove themselves twice over just to be seen, heard, and valued equally. Progress has not erased prejudice, and equality is still too often conditional. 30 years on, the message of Beijing calls us to act, to invest in women and girls, to change the norms that hold them back, and to ensure that no one is left behind. Aujourd'hui, j'honore.
Today, I honour the pathway of my parents in reaffirming our commitment. Equality is not a delayed dream. It is a pledge that we must honour. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Canada. Excellencies, distinguished participants. Oh, sorry. One more. Oh, I'm sorry. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica.
Madam President, Excellencies, 30 years ago in the city of Beijing, the international community made a historic pledge that the rights of women and girls would be fully recognized as human rights. We resolved to ensure that gender equality would be prioritized as central to peace, development, and democracy. Today, Jamaica stands proudly in reaffirming that commitment, determined to accelerate progress and to ensure that no woman or girl is left behind. Since 1995, Jamaica has moved to strengthen its national gender architecture. Our transition from a small women's affairs desk to a fully established Bureau of Gender Affairs is testament to this. Our overarching gender mainstreaming program is supported by specialized units addressing policy and research matters, sexual harassment, gender-based violence, provision of regional counseling and referrals, male engagement, and socioeconomic empowerment. Over the past 5 years in particular, we've enacted landmark legislation and implemented robust policies to advance gender equality, including stronger protection against domestic violence and sexual harassment. Our National Strategic Action Plan to eliminate gender-based violence in Jamaica for the period 2017 to 27 has facilitated specific outcomes, and these include the establishment of government-run shelters, a national shelter unit, and a 24-hour gender-based violence helpline. We've also strengthened women's political leadership. Today, 30% of our parliamentarians and 1/4 of our cabinet are women. The establishment of a bicameral caucus of women parliamentarians, a historic all-female sitting of parliament, and the fact that our judiciary at all levels now is comprised of primarily women, all stand as powerful symbols of Jamaica's belief in action
that women must play an integral role in all aspects of leadership. Jamaica also remains active in fostering initiatives to amplify the voices of women, including in global diplomacy. As a small developing country, our achievements are significant, and we remain resolute about progress amidst long-standing challenges such as limited resources, justice, equality, and sustainable development. On the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the founding of the UN and the 25th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution on Women, Peace and Security is an opportunity.
The Minister of Jamaica, Excellencies, distinguished participants, the high-level meeting of the General Assembly to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women will be suspended to facilitate the change of venue. The meeting will resume shortly in the Trusteeship Council chamber, where the plenary segment will continue with the remaining speakers on the list. I would like to ask participants to proceed directly to the Trusteeship Council chamber to resume the meeting in a timely manner. I thank you for your cooperation.